Today's story, a Pineville Ghost. Brought to you by Darth Redbeard. Chapter 1. The History of the Legend. They said that legends can live forever. Not many people believed that saying. Sure, there was the legend of the Moon Demon, but many had written it off until that fateful day as she returned and almost plunged the world into endless night, only to be stopped by 12 brave warriors. However, the other legends were ignored as being fairy tales, nothing more than stories to tell young boys and girls to behave at night. One legend, however, had faded into history, and was hardly spoken of for the last 40 years. Not since that day 70 years before the birth of Princess Uchi had the story been known. All but few had forgotten it, and even then the younger generation wrote it off as nothing more than a kid's tale. The moon shone brightly over Pineville on that fall night, as the last train of the day was loading its cargo and passengers. Pineville was growing quick, but not to the level many of the other cities had expected. Part of this is mostly due to its location near the Forbidden Forest. No one would dare enter the woods in fear of what awaited them. As the cars were empty, the engineer drove the train to a siding and waited for the firemen to return to the engine. The engineer was a 7'2" tall, pale man with dark red hair. He had spent time in the Royal Guard, but after retiring, he began to drive the train from the Imperial City to Pineville on the new Pineville Railroad. His name was Alex Achilles. After beginning his new job, he had ran his train on time with no accidents. His train of choice was the 440. It was brand new for its time. The smokestack was very wide on top, helping to regulate the steam made from the wood. 4 wheels in the front behind a device known as the cow catcher. 4 large wheels in the cab helped the engine move with the steam produced in the cylinders. His train was the state-of-the-art, but was still experimental. His son had joined him when he was 13 years old, working on the engine. Alex and his son Jacob and Jacob's son Ron were the last of their family. Ron was about 15 years old and getting ready to strike out on his own. Alex was to his musing by the sound of another man entering the cab. He had turned to see his son Jacob enter the cab. Jacob was 6 inches shorter than his father, with blonde hair. His dark blue eyes held tears as he went to his place. "Visiting your wife's grave again?" Alex asked, his voice close to breaking as he remembered his daughter-in-law, Jacob's wife Carrie, with a shining spark always present in her eye, lips as white as a red rose, her short brown hair, and her smile. Her personality and good treatment of Jacob made her well liked by Alex. Her and Jacob began dating. She was quite literally the light of Jacob's life. When she perished to a rogue timber wolf, Jacob had been devastated. Her grave was on the hill overlooking Pineville, the same place they were married at. "I can't believe how long it's been," Jacob replied. "It seems like yesterday we were all laughing and having fun playing tag. Is this how it was when Mom passed?" "I'm afraid so," Alex answered, looking down as he closed his eyes, picturing his beautiful wife, her long brown hair and beautiful eyes that showed bright. Alex was home from training. "She was my elder half, and when she died in a vandal raid, it hurt. It's part of the reason I left the guard. The other part was to finish raising you. I can tell you that leaving the guard was the best decision of my life." Just as they were about to take the engine back to the shed, another man walked up. "We need you to take this car to Death Valley," he said. "It's what we have left, and we decided to send it to them." "Okay," Alex said. They put the train into forward and opened the throttle. They moved to beyond the switch, and before the man switched the points, they backed to the siding and coupled the car to the engine. They moved the train out of the junction and onto the line. It began to rain as they drove down the line. Forest covered the tracks, making it dark. The light from their headlamp was their only source of light. The rhythm of the train traveling along the tracks kept a steady beat. Alex's eyes watched the track as they continued on. Jacob threw the wood into the firebox. He placed their food onto the rack and left the firebox open, allowing their food to cook while they traveled. The darkness of the cab only illuminated by the light of the fire. Just before they neared the old castle, the engine began to pick up speed. "What's going on?" Jacob asked. "I don't know," Alex replied, trying to apply the brakes, only for them to fail. The train continued to pick up speed as they neared a dangerous curve. "What's wrong with the brakes?" Jacob was running over to help apply the brakes. "I don't know," Alex shouted. "I lost control." Alex and Jacob tried their best to stop the train, both pulling hard on the brakes, but it was no use. Alex went back to the car and jumped on the roof, hoping to maybe have the car's brakes stop the train, but a low-hanging tree sailed across, knocking the wheel off the brakes, leaving no chance of the train stopping the normal way. He went back to the cab and switched the reverse into reverse. The wheels began to turn backwards, but for some unknown reason, the train continued to roll forward. When he went to close the throttle, the train continued moving at high speeds towards a sharp bend in the rails. "Look out!" Jacob hollered. They closed their eyes as the train came off the rails, sliding down a hillside, the wood from the fire spilling everywhere. As the train came to the halt, the fire from the firebox consumed the cab. Alex and Jacob ran out, but could not keep flames from getting on them. The flames consumed them as they got out, but soon they were burned to death, their bodies still trying to get the flames off. There they lay on the forest floor, their engine wrecked as they watched each other slowly begin to pass. "I'm sorry, son," Alex thought, as he closed his eyes one last time, never to open again. All Jacob could do was watch his father slip away as he faded in and out. Eventually, Jacob's eyes also closed, just as his father's. Timber wolves appeared in the smoldering clearing and began to chew the charred remains of the two men. No one knew what happened to the train until a year later. A young boy named Roger Richard saw the train rolling along the old abandoned rails into the forbidden forest. He ran back to Pineville and informed the others what he saw, but many said that the rails were no longer in use. Now since the day the last train ever traveled, it had disappeared without a trace. In over 20 years, people claimed to see an engine use the rails, but the legend soon faded in history and was rarely ever talked about until many chose to ignore the legend.